Hola chicos y chicas, está aquí mi gato zorro conmigo para enseñarles acerca del pretérito versus imperfecto y conjugaciones de querer y poder en el pretérito. Son verbos irregulares, entonces es importante pasar tiempo y aprender las conjugaciones específicas. Hello all, you may have noticed that my lovely cat Zorro is here with me to teach you all about some more in-depth knowledge on preterite versus imperfect, as well as the irregular conjugations of querer y poder, to want and to be able to in preterite. So our goals for today, los objetivos del módulo 3 son: yo puedo reconocer los trigger words para el pretérito y el imperfecto, y yo puedo aprender y practicar las conjugaciones de querer y poder en el pretérito. So we're doing kind of two separate things here. One is building on our lesson from yesterday, and the other is learning something perhaps completely new. My students definitely have not learned querer and poder, but maybe your teacher got to these before our extended spring break. We are going to start with our calentamiento and then move through all of the things that I was just talking about. Your calentamiento, as it should be, is at the top of your class packet. And you will see that you have a couple of visual hints here. It is not just reading and responding to questions. It is also thinking about this usage of when we use preterite and when we use imperfect. And as we talked about in our last module, which was, I believe, on Friday for all of you, the green highlight indicates our ongoing action, our imperfect, and then the red indicates our preterite, our one-time, finite, definite beginning and end, all of that stuff. So now is a moment when you should be pausing my video here so that you can work on your calentamiento. Okay, and once you are done with that, hopefully you pause, giving yourself some time there, and we are moving right along to the bulk of our lesson, which is these trigger words for the past tenses. Trigger words is just kind of the easiest phrase that I've found to describe what these are, but they are essentially words that tell you automatically whether not just the sentence, but actually the specific verb talks about an ongoing habitual action. That would be our green, our imperfect, like we talked about, or a sudden, finite, definite beginning and end, which would indicate preterite. The reason I included this image at the bottom left of the screen is because I like to think of it as something that starts an action and starts a process. So you'll see a trigger word, and that's kind of like knocking over the first domino, and then that tells you what the following verb should be conjugated in. Okay. On this slide, there is a lot to remember, but I just want to point out a couple of important visual things. As we saw in our last module, this sort of stoplight is our code, our visual code for imperfecto. Because we see that yellow slow down and green go, which would indicate our ongoing actions. Obviously, imperfecto is all in the past tense, so any of these words that you were thinking of happened in the past. We have, and I would encourage you, to make sure you are practicing your speech and your pronunciation as well. I would encourage you to repeat after me when I say these words. So I'll leave a little bit of a space after I say them for you to do that. So, chicos, para el imperfecto, los trigger words son siempre, always, cada vez, cada día, cada semana. Cada means every, so that fits perfectly into our imperfect, ongoing, habitual conjugations. Todas las semanas, todos los días. This can be anything you'd want to put in there. Todas or todos means all, and then las or los, that would be going back to Spanish 1, talking about whether the thing that you are talking about is masculine or feminine. So dia, even though it ends in an a, it's kind of a misnomer. That is in a masculine word. So you would say todos los días to make sure they match up. If you were talking about semanas, weeks, you would say todas las semanas to make sure we have all things matching there. Durante means during, and then there is a note in English here. Just make sure that if you are talking about during something in the past, it is not a specific quantity of time, because if it were a specific quantity of time, it would be the preterite. I'm going to go ahead and put this next box up. This is the English translation. I did go through them for you all, but sometimes it's helpful to have them visually. This is another moment to pause. Make sure you have all of these trigger words written down. You do have the kind of word bank in your class packets. You can just copy and paste those down into the correct category. All right, and moving right along, el pretérito. Once again here, kind of a lot of words on one slide, but I do want to draw attention to this lovely stoplight image. Our preterite is those one-time dots, definite beginning and ending events. So again, I would encourage you to repeat after me. Una vez, un día, una semana, ayer, anoche, la vez pasada, el día pasado, la semana pasada. So again here, once I get this screen up, this is a great opportunity for you to pause your video, make sure all of those phrases are dragged down, and then if you need to, go back and practice that pronunciation. Again, there is a little bit of space for you to do it, but if you didn't feel like you got enough, then you want to make sure you're still practicing that pronunciation. So we'll see that una vez means one time, un día means one day, una semana means 1 week, etc. You can put almost any quantity of time in that blank there that works. Ayer is yesterday, anoche is last night, and then la vez pasada would be the last time, la semana pasada would be last week, etc. Right, so make sure we have all of those copied down in our class packet, and then we can move on. Cuando is a little bit trickier of a word. It is most often preterite, but it can fall into either category here. So we have two sentences that are examples for us to think about. The first one is cuando tener 15 años, and then the second is cuando terminar mi viaje. Let's break these down a little bit. Obviously, these are infinitive verbs, we know, because they end in that ER and AR. That means they're not conjugated. They don't belong to anybody yet. We are deciding how we conjugate them, and we need to decide whether we want to conjugate them in preterite or in imperfect. The first sentence, cuando blank 15 años, deals with age, because we remember in Spanish we don't say I am a certain age, we say I have a certain number of years, and that's what we're saying there, when I was 15 years old. The second sentence, mi viaje, we might recognize that from our vocabulary earlier in the year. That means my trip. And then terminar, we can probably get a good guess as to what that means. It means to end, okay? Like terminate, like the Terminator. So if we're thinking about the meaning of these two sentences, we should be going back in our mind already and thinking about, okay, which one is more of an ongoing situation and which one is final? So in your class packets, there is a space for you to think about that and then actually fill in those correct conjugations in either preterite or imperfect for tener and terminar. So I want you to pause here and think about that and fill some of that out, but I'm just going to go right along so that we can get the correct answers. And that would be that our first sentence should be cuando tenía 15 años. That should be imperfecto. That ia is one of our imperfect endings. And that is because it's not saying when I turned 15, it's saying when I was 15, which is something that goes on for an extended period of time. The second one should be cuando terminó, with an accent on that last o, mi viaje, because it is something that ended. And if we remember back to our previous lessons, the preterite deals with beginnings and endings of actions. So we can see here that cuando doesn't always tell us specifically what we need to conjugate. Okay, moving right along here, this is a totally different topic, kind of an about face. So if you're still feeling like, wait, I'm not sure about those trigger words, I'm not sure about preterite versus imperfect, this is the time to pause and go back in the video, reach out to your teacher, ask for some help there, because we are kind of departing from that right now in the lesson. So, las conjugaciones de querer en el pretérito. Querer significa to want, okay? And normally, if we think about wanting something, it is not something that happens in one moment, like we are talking about here, because we're talking about the pretérito. But those conjugations do exist and they are irregular, so we do need to learn and practice them. So we see here our very familiar chart. I am going to say the conjugations and then leave room for you to repeat as necessary. So, yo quise, tú quisiste, ella, él, usted quiso, nosotros quisimos, vosotros quisisteis, ellas, ellos, ustedes quisieron. My biggest pet peeve in terms of pronunciation is when I hear that QU pronounced as hua. Does not exist in Spanish. Wipe it right out of your vocabulary and your pronunciation. It should be a k, like a C sound for all of those conjugations there. Okay, moving right along, we're going to learn all of the conjugations and then practice them. Our next verb is poder. That should say poder. I apologize there. And then same thing, I will leave a short space afterward for you to pronounce them yourself. Yo pude, tú pudiste, ella, él, usted pudo, nosotros pudimos, vosotros pudisteis, ellas, ellos, ustedes pudieron. Okay, that's a lot. I imagine you will probably have had to pause at some point here, just making sure that you have all of these copied down super correctly, and that you've practiced pronouncing them as well, because they are funny words. When not used to them, it's important to practice to get better. Okay, es hora de practicar. You should see pretty clearly in your class packets that you have some alternating sentences there. You'll be conjugating all of them in the preterite, and all of them will include those verbs querer, to want, and poder, to be able to. So here's another moment to pause the video. Try your absolute best first, and obviously use those notes that you just took. They are going to be very, very helpful in getting all those right answers. Okay, and we are almost there, almost at the end of our class. Our boleto de salida is to test that we, are fully understanding and fully able to comprehend what we've been over in this lesson today. We are going to go to Edulastic and take a multiple choice boleto de salida that your teacher has assigned to you. It should be named DL_Spanish to ELM, boleto de salida. Okay. Gracias a todos para escuchar y para prestar atención. Ojalá hayan entendido bien de qué se trata todo eso y hasta la próxima vez. Gracias. Chao.